Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Niels and Larry sent me an article and they said, Steve, you've talked about this happening in America before, but it happens in England too. And this is a problem I suspect happens all around the world. But a man was shocked as the house he owned for 30 years was sold without his knowledge. Someone bought his house and he didn't know it. This is from the independent.co.uk, and Chiara Giordano wrote the story. And we've heard about this happening in America. Here we are in England. A man was shocked to discover the house he'd owned for 30 years had been sold, and no one told him. And that was while he was working and not staying at the house at that time. The Reverend Mike Hall had been in North Wales when he received a phone call from neighbors who told him someone had turned the lights on inside his property in Luton. And so they said, hey, we know that you're not there, right? I mean, we're talking to you on the phone. You're in Wales. Someone's in your house. They turned the lights on. So your first thought is, gee, burglars, right? So he drove back early the following morning to find the locks had been changed at his home. His home had been stripped of all its furnishings, and there was a builder working inside the house. So he called the police. But the builder went and got the father of the new owner, who told him he had bought the house in July. Guy, because I bought the house, my house. So he tells BBC Radio 4, I went to the front door, tried my key in the front door, it didn't work, and then a man opened the front door to me. I pushed him to one side and got inside. I really didn't know what he was doing there. The shock of seeing the house stripped of furniture, all furnishings, carpet, curtains, everything was out of the property. And so that's another problem. Where'd that stuff go? He said police initially told him this was a civil matter rather than fraud. And here's the thing. There is criminal fraud. There's also civil fraud, which means that if you defraud somebody, depends on where you are, we're talking about England or America or what state you're in, theoretically, you can be arrested for it and tried in a criminal setting, or you can be sued for it by the person who's been wronged by it, and they can then seek damages against you. And sometimes both can happen, meaning that you can be sued and you can be tried. But in this situation, the police said, well, it's a civil matter. And you have to understand that quite often, when the police know that there's a civil remedy for something, they'll often say, well, just do the civil thing. We got more important stuff to do. Bedfordshire police now say that they are investigating after the BBC found out that the way the man who sold the house managed to do it was by creating a duplicate driver's license and bank account set up in the name of the man who owned the house. So someone did the research, figured out this house is currently not being lived in because the owner is away for a little while. They found out who he was. They got fake documents, and then they posed as the owner and committed the fraud that way. The house was purchased by Mr. Hall in 1990 after he graduated from the university and started his first job, and it was sold now for £131,000. He said the land registry online documents showed the new buyer as the registered owner of his home, meaning they legally own the property. And I'm not crazy about that phrase, saying they legally own the property. Because if these facts are all as we think they are, and this goes to court, he's going to get his house back. So he does legally own the house in the sense that the courts will recognize his ownership rights are better than the rights of the person who bought the house from an imposter. However, on paper, which is what the Register of Deeds looks at, on paper, the person who's in the house does own the house according to the documents. But that does not mean that they legally own the property in the truest sense of that phrase. So that's why I don't like the phrase, but he told the BBC at the point, the police said, well, there's nothing further we can do here. This is a civil matter. You need to leave the house and contact your solicitors. That's what the police told him. I was shocked, having seen the house in the state it was. I was in a bit of state of shock anyway, but then to be told by the police they didn't believe a criminal offense had been committed here was just unbelievable. The solicitors involved in the property transaction, apparently there were some involved in the sale of the house by the imposter, have not been identified. but they told the BBC they could not comment due to the ongoing investigation. So that's what's even crazier about this, is that there were, in America we'd say attorneys involved, and the attorneys didn't catch the fact that somebody's sitting here claiming that they own this house and it ain't them. So there are a lot of things that could be done here, but it does seem kind of strange. The first question I'm wondering about is I'm wondering if the house was listed for sale someplace. Was it listed for sale? That'd be interesting to find out. Likewise, was there ever a sign posted out front that said this house for sale? Because if I woke up one morning and there's a sign in front of my house saying the house is for sale, I'd notice it. Now, I actually do live in my house and don't spend much time in Wales working, so that might be a little different. But it does make you wonder. But the biggest problem here is that some people have figured out that courthouses and county offices that accept things for filing, whether it's a court clerk, county clerk, register of deeds, they will often simply take anything you give them, stamp it, and file it. And so some people have figured out that, hey, I can just walk in there with a piece of paper that says, I just bought a house, hand it to them, pay the filing fee, they stamp it, they file it. And there aren't really any good checks and balances in there because this stuff does happen. And so I suspect what happened here, and again, I'm reading between the lines, trying to figure out how this worked out the way it did. I suspect that when he left, he's going to be gone for a while, somebody realized this is an opportunity for us to do this. So they got the guy's name and information, got some fake identification, dummied up some fake paperwork, and then did this. But it's a scary concept. But yeah, the guy goes away for work, and someone calls him and goes, hey, there's people in your house. And he assumes it's burglars and finds out, no, it's the new owner. A scary concept. Reverend Mike Hall was working away when neighbors called to say someone was in his Luton home. So independent.co.uk ran the story. Chiara Giordano wrote the story. And Niels and Larry both sent it to me. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. But like I said, we've heard about this here in America. And it happened a lot also during the housing issues that we had back in 08 and 09, because there were a lot of unoccupied homes due to a wave of foreclosures that swept the nation. And so somebody would just see an unoccupied home and move into it. See, I live here now. And I remember seeing an article, a story on a local news station where a guy moved into a house and then he went online and found a quitclaim deed and he filled it out and he quitclaimed the house to himself. In essence, I hereby waive any claims I have of ownership of this house in favor of myself. And it literally makes no sense that you can quitclaim something to yourself, but he filed it and a court clerk accepted it for filing, or a county clerk. And I remember the news interviewing the guy, and they're like, this is brilliant. This guy filed the paperwork and they accepted it for filing. It's like, but you that piece of paper doesn't mean you own the house. And the house is most likely bank owned. And I suspect the bank came by a little while later and evicted the guy and or ousted him, as they'd say in the old days, and got the paperwork straightened out. But unfortunately, people think, I got a piece of paper, I filed it, they accepted it, I own the house now. It's not how it works. Unfortunately, this guy here, he's got somebody who, at least on paper, appears to be innocent, meaning that they honestly thought they were buying the house in an arm's length transaction. Someone's got their money. And that's another victim here, is the people who thought they bought this house. They're out the money. The question is going to track that person down and get their money back. Highly unlikely, but you never know. So a man shocked his house he owned for 30 years, sold without his knowledge. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Positivity always wins. Always.